Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name's Colin Mathis. I'm the gallery director here. Thanks for coming out. Looks like we got a good crowd. Today we're going to hear from Michael Newhall, who's our current artist in residence. And you can find him working in the printmaking lab throughout the semester. And he also, as part of his artist in residence, he has an exhibition up in the foundation gallery, which is kind of at the end of this building, if you know where printmaking is, or just as you're walking to leave this building on this floor. That's where the foundation gallery is, sort of the other side of the building. But in the gallery, you can see a broad survey of his work spanning decades, really. And also in the foundation gallery, tonight from 4 to 6 p.m., there's going to be a reception with the artists there and snacks and just a bunch of people there if you want to ask any more questions with the artist or anything like that. That's the great time to show up. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to Michael's talk today, especially because he's worked across many different mediums, and he really varies the technique of what he does. So you'll get a master class in kind of trying different artistic techniques if you see his talk. And beyond Michael having like 6 decades of art making figured out, he's also a longtime Buddhist practitioner, an ordained monk, and an emeritus guiding teacher at a name I'm going to screw up, Jikoji Zen Center. Oh, that is how you say it. And you'll also see like different Buddhist references as he's showing his work throughout the talk. And he received his MFA from the School of Art Institute of Chicago and his BS in Comprehensive Fine Arts from the University of Wisconsin. And he's also taught a lot. He's taught at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, MIAD in Milwaukee, and Naropa University. And he's shown work nationally throughout all over the place, but including the Grohmann Museum, the Art Institute of Chicago, and he's a recent 2024 Mary L. Knoll Fellow winner, and that's a fellowship for artists in Milwaukee. And he also won a NEA fellowship, which is the National Endowment for the Arts. So, without further ado, please welcome Michael Newhall.
First of all, I'd like to thank you, Colin. It's been a great support while I've been an artist in residence, and also, I don't know if Lisa Marie is here, but I'd like to thank her too, because she was the initiating person that got my residency going. I don't know too many of you. I kind of feel a little bit like a ghost. I've gone to a few classes here and just visited, but basically what's happened with the printmaking studio is there's no printmaking classes this semester, so I have it to myself mostly, and so I've been doing some monoprints, quite a bit of monoprints, and also some etchings, and it's been fun because I haven't done any printmaking for a long time. Oh, I just mentioned you, Lisa Marie. Yeah. And anyway, what I'm going to do today is. Most of you are artists or interested in the arts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, rather than do a kind of bio or anything, I'm going to do a kind of visual bio. And I'm going to start with my early work, and I'm going to progressively go down and get to my contemporary work. This is a contemporary piece. It was just done this year. And this is it's really obvious to everyone. These are a few obvious figures on a boat crossing the river Styx. So this is like, like T.S. Eliot said, in your beginning is your end. So I just thought I'd start with that. Anyway, I'm gonna start with some of my early work. So I originally started out as I come from a family of artists. My sister and my father were artists. And I started out as an abstract expressionist. I was slinging paint like Tworkoff, like mid-career de Kooning, and I was an action painter. And all through high school and the first year in undergraduate, all I was doing was abstract art and moving paint around in a expressive way. And then I switched in the second year, and I radically switched, and I started doing really tight surrealist. I wouldn't call it surrealist, but I was referencing my actual background. So I grew up in just a ubiquitous, ordinary suburban house in Madison, Wisconsin, and so this is a reference to it. This is a graphite one. This is also a reference to just an apartment house with lettuce in back. There's my heart in the parking lot or whatever, and a mobile home. So these are some early examples of kind of doing, kind of trying to reference what was familiar to me, and then I moved down. I was an organic farmer up in northern Wisconsin, and I moved down to Green Lake County, and started working for a comic book artist named Dennis Kitchen, and started painting landscapes. And this was a tree up above his farm, a dead apple tree, and I painted this in succession. And again, in this period, I'm painting quite representationally. The frame is actually a boat frame that I salvaged, a boat frame, so that's that unusual shape. There's a little watercolor of the same tree. This is called the Hungry Ghost series, and a hungry ghost is a Buddhist reference to a state of unappeased appetite, where whatever you have, it's not enough. So that's the reference. That's a hungry ghost reference, and this tree kind of evoked that. And so I started out realistically here. This is a large oil. That's a smaller watercolor, and then I started tweaking it because I started out as an abstract painter, and so there's an iteration, more expressive. There's another iteration. That's a large painting. There's another iteration of it, and these are some smaller drawings, some notational drawings of it. All the same tree. And when I worked for Dennis Kitchen, I was really poor. Seriously poor. So I worked for Dennis Kitchen as a comic book production artist. So he had a factory. He had a kind of rural factory where he did underground comics. He's well known because Crumb and Spiegelman and even Griffin were there. So it was kind of a well-known place in the Midwest. Anyway, I was one of his slaves, one of his production artists, and mostly I colored comics for other people like Burns and other famous artists, and but I did a few comics myself, and this is a few pages of it. And in the gallery, there's one page. There's another page of it. It's called Buddha Crackers, and it's not your typical panel cartoon anyway. And there's another page. So the person down in the bottom is actually me talking to Vincent van Gogh. It's from one of the, I think the only picture of Vincent van Gogh, photograph of Vincent van Gogh, but it's from the back. He's sitting in a chair, and I just found it. And so I'm sitting with Vincent van Gogh, and one of Vincent van Gogh's lines, which is a really good line for an artist, is "Not a day without a line." In other words, like artists are only artists if they make art. You know, you have to work, you have to produce. And that, I think, if anyone knows the story of Vincent van Gogh, he was manically productive, you know. And anyway, I also, since I was very poor, I got this weird job doing scrimshaw. So I fell into this weird job. This is a enlargement of a elephant tusk, a slice of an elephant tusk. So this is only about 3 inches by maybe 5 inches. So this is like a miniature dry point thing, where the ink is just rubbed in, and then it's it's not printed. So, and that's the three graces right there, and I'm in the background painting them. I don't know if you can see me behind the trees. And there's another one. These were my personal ones, but I did a whole bunch of them that were like ridiculously commercial. They were just, pretty flowers and birds and stuff like that. And people put them in jewelry and stuff. So anyway, that was my livelihood. At that time, I was doing some plein air landscapes, and I was also doing some plein air work in cityscapes. So this was a cityscape that I did. So I'm again still painting relatively realistically. This is a cityscape that I did just outside in Chicago, just outside my window. Bunch of abandoned cars. There's another one in Madison, outside my niece's window. This one's from a studio window in the Bay Area. That's a abandoned submarine factory, and Oakland on the other side of the bay. And that's just the space between two houses in Milwaukee. Just a small watercolor. And all this time, by the way, I was actually coming back to more expressive painting, but when I was teaching in Milwaukee in Maya, I took a kind of left turn because I had a really good view of downtown Milwaukee, and I started painting the 360 pan of Milwaukee, and you can see I'm really tweaking the perspective, so the buildings really jump around. So this is between 1st and 2nd Street in Walker's Point, which is, if you know Milwaukee, which is, and then if I'm panning to the right, so you see that white building continues, and there's the railroad tracks, there's downtown Milwaukee, there's a street below me, there's the railroad tracks again, the Sioux Line, there's a building in back of me, and another building, and it continues around. So anyway, this is a large pan. It's in a museum now in Milwaukee, and it's about 30 feet long, something like that. It's really, really long, all together, all the panels, yeah. So, anyway, so that's where I am. I think Colin mentioned that I'm also a Buddhist monk. So while I was in graduate school and before, I developed a relationship with a Zen teacher, Kobuchino Tagawa Roshi, who's a wonderful Japanese teacher, the founder of Jikoji, and he sent me to Japan, and also I had a visiting lectureship at Osaka Institute of Art. So I just got into Japanese art. I really got into Japanese art. This series, it's from the Heian period in Japanese art. It's a series of scrolls called the Genji Monogatari Amaki, and I'm sort of spinning off these scrolls, and these are the ones that got me the NEA grant, and they sold, and I was in galleries in Chicago, and I was like, thought I was on my way. Anyway, these are just watercolors, ink and watercolors, and they're like interiors, but you know they're not realistic interiors, of course. There's another one. There's another one that's kind of a landscape. This is a diptych oil of that same sort of Japanese style. What's it called? Yuifoku, which literally means a house with the roof blown away. So you've probably seen these pictures where you kind of look down and you see a setting, and there's a room, and there's another room, or something like that. So the Japanese term, the literal translation means a house with the roof gone. Yeah, and it's a wonderful way of looking at things. There's another one, and these are very cartoonish. And at that time in Chicago, I was very much influenced by what's called the Chicago Imagist movement. And the Chicago Imagist movement, and studied with one of my mentors. My main mentor was Ryu Shida, and a good friend, and also Christine Randberg, and Jim Lutz and David Sharp and others. Like these are all like second generation Chicago Imagists, and the whole Chicago Imagist movement had to do with kind of raw psychological interpretations of things, and bringing in cartoon elements, bringing in kind of edgy cartoon elements. So this is a large oil, a kind of repetition of a pattern, large oil. The same Fuinyoku, the house with the roof blown away, and that's a diptych. And there's another large oil, and there's another watercolor. So these are pretty popular. I sold these pretty well, and had a good gallery representation. And I also, at that time, I was also trying to incorporate Buddhist iconography, but definitely not devotionally. I was tweaking it, I was messing with it, and this was my first what I called Buddha field, and you can see I'm at that point things are getting pretty dense. Some of my later paintings get very, very dense. So I apparently have horror vacui, fear of empty spaces or something. Anyway, what I really like is, rather than the conventional way of composing, where you arrange things, you have correspondence with this, you have a dark over there, a light over there, you have a shape over there, a shape. And instead of doing that kind of composing, pattern field composing is where you kind of flood the whole surface with a kind of uniform, almost texture, Pollock was known as a pattern field, and the great Larry Poons, a great undiscovered painter, or less known painter, Larry Poons too, was a pattern field painter. Anyway, so I was moving more in that direction. You can see that this is a very flooded, dense field, but there is a major Buddha in there, and then a whole bunch of little, what I call Buddha morphs, little blobs of, these forms that look like the conventional sense of like the yogic posture of a Buddha in meditation. So it's, I keep going back to that. That's kind of a thing. There's a watercolor, kind of a fire Buddha, same thing. This is more conventional. This is more of like a pattern field of many Buddha morphs. This one was done in Japan with a paint called Nikawa painting, which is actually the binder. The binder is not like gum arabic like it is here in the West. It's fish scale glue. That's Nikawa painting. Yeah. And there's a watercolor diptych. You can see these are very cartoony, and I'm really tweaking the image a lot and really having fun with it, you know. There's another one. So each little Buddha is a kind of, I guess you could call it kind of a self-reference, but as I mentioned just recently, it's also a reference of what we call Sangha or community, or like interconnection. So, instead of an ideal Buddha being a conventional icon, it diversifies, you know, and so that's what I was doing. Here's a large oil. This is kind of a male and female. This is a spin-off an Ensor painting of Christ entering Brussels. If you've seen that, it's a really famous painting. I love Ensor. And so these are two monks entering the city. One's male, one's female, and then there's all kinds of overlays on top of it. And you'll see later, I really get into overlays. There's a head, and by the way, I'm very much into working with a kind of head or face motif. And throughout my whole working history, I'm always working with this conventional bust or head, this face. You could say it's my identity. You could say or my non-identity, or that I'm referencing a whole sense of community, or whatever. So that's kind of what I call a Sangha self-portrait. Yeah. So there's some clay pieces in the show, some clay relief pieces, and this is another relief piece. And it actually becomes a face or a head, and the central Buddha, and is part of the face. And there's what I later called Buddha fields. So I'm working almost abstractly with a lot of, not really abstractly, but I'm working with images, but I'm working with them in quite different ways. So I'm bringing in a lot of disparate elements to really just two figures sitting in meditation. So we're going to switch to kind of some early figurative work. So I went to this is a figure. This is a figure that's kind of a little Picassoid that some of my early face or head pieces. Here's another one that's very cartoonish. And this is this sense of like multiple heads coming out of one body. I've titled Hydra, like many heads come out of one body, in the sense of like we have many identities, we have many roles, there's many aspects of ourselves. So I was kind of playing off that in this kind of cartoony way. There's another kind of amorphic head, where the head becomes almost like chambers of a heart, and one chamber has a little narration in it, a little story. I have no idea what it means. There's another one, a hydra. So these are some early heads. There's a head where the head itself is like overlaid in a city, but the head itself is a landscape with a fire in the middle, and a pond in the foreground, and a couple homeless people in the background. There's a large drawing of a head with a railroad track. There's another head where a monk is rowing in an area that's been flooded. And this is my favorite painting. This is a hydra, and in the middle of this hydra is the Ravenswood train station. So I stayed with some friends. They're in the front row there, Peter and Liz, and I used to take the Ravenswood all the time. So in the middle of that is the Ravenswood L that takes me downtown to the Art Institute where I taught, and then everything else is in there, everything. So yeah, so as you can see, I love to load things. So there's a kind of challenging head that's actually kind of almost like a dissected heart, a kind of anatomical excursion. So there's another head that's very complex. A lot of these faces or heads you're going to see like a conventional Buddhist robe. So if you see it like a kind of brown robe on one side, that means that's a teacher's robe, and this kind of white sleeve, that's a conventional Buddhist monk thing. So this was done at Jikoji Zen Center, and in the background is the woods behind the meditation hall. There's a head, it's kind of obscured, but there's a head with a lot of personal information, and my mother, my father, my sister, my brother, just a lot of stuff is in it. So this is also a head. It's very hard to see, but this is a small casing. It's only 7 inches by 9 inches. So instead of doing watercolors or gouache, I get into casing, which actually I prefer. It's more versatile, and so you can see I'm working with a lot of cartoon imagery and kind of playing with the whole hydra aspect. That's also a head. It's hard to see. Do you see the couple sleeping down there? Yeah, and the waterfall and the railroad tracks, and there's even a figure there. Yeah, so it's kind of, anyway, these are fun. They're very small, and they go very quick, and they're like doing them. There's a head as well. And there's a head with a lot of clouds, and a Buddha, and a stairway up to the Buddha seat, from the city. There's what? How small is it? Very small. Yeah, they're all the casings are all those watercolor blocks. They're all just like 7 by 9 or that size. Yeah, they're all small. Yeah. So this is a larger oil, a figurative larger oil. So you can see I'm getting a little more expressive in my figuration. And there's a large oil too. I'm getting a little more abstract and this is also two figures. This is a kind of diptych, kind of references those kind of Picassoid shapes. And again, I'm going back to that Japanese style with these really strong diagonals, which I'm very drawn toward. You know, the repetition of strong diagonals is, to me, is like, I don't know. I just like that. At the same time, I was working with sumi ink, and these are each one of these is a piece of calligraphy practice paper, has a grid on it, and so I've got about 700 of these or so, and I've made wall installations, and I'm going to have one in Milwaukee, a big whole wall of these, and they're fun because each one's a self-portrait, each one is a commentary, you know, on everybody else as well, you know, like one of them is you, so anyway, so it's kind of like that, and it's fun to put them together and see how they fit as a grid. Yeah, that's great too. These are also two heads of in the same series. I did a whole bunch of mirror heads, and this is a diptych of, I think this one, yeah, this is the one where I took a whole book. I took a whole book and I ripped up all the pages of the book, and I did a head on each book, and then I assembled it on two canvases, and it made them a diptych. So there's writing in back. So, and this is just another example, a more current example of an assemblage of these heads. You can see, besides being very amorphic with these heads, I sometimes get really cartoony, or I come in with some little notational things. And here's a few examples of just individual heads. So that's the limbic system, by the way, stepping out of the head. And that's where I'm practicing calligraphy. So you can see there's a lot of variety in these, and I have a lot of fun, because basically you can go to a Chinese store and buy these big packets of calligraphy paper. It costs almost nothing, and you just work, it's fun. There's another one. It's kind of cartoonish. There's another one. That's kind of the face is overlaid with some drawing. And there's another one that's a little more amorphic. And at the same time, I was working in ceramics, so what I did, besides doing these relief things that are in the show and that I showed you previously, I had like a home altar or shrine where we light incense to a Buddha and kind of remember the ancestors that meditated before us. And so I have a home shrine, and what I did was I cast it, just a simple two-piece cast, and had it fired without the head. And then on top of the head, again, like the drawings, anything goes, you know? I put anything on it. I had a lot, and there's some more shown. There's yours, Pamela. Yeah. Pamela's a photographer, and the head of that is a disassembled camera, you know, an old-fashioned camera, you know, with the actual, what do you call that screen? The shutter, the shutter screen, yeah. There's one that's a plumbing Buddha, yeah. And here's just a few more examples of heads. So this is a head that painting I'm very fond of. There's a head. That's also a head. Formally, I really like this painting. I think it really holds together very nicely. This one is a little more playful. Looks like I'm trying to tell you something, but I have no idea what I'm trying to tell you. It's up to you. There's another head. There's another head. This one's done on mylar. It was painted on mylar for a while. It's a hydra, you know, so multiple heads come out of one body. And there's another one with a lot of information. And again, that same Buddhist robe is implied as far as the bust part. Yeah. And there's another small painting of a head. Oh yeah, and these are monks as well. This is a diptych. This one and this one is a diptych. Yeah, they go together. And no, I don't know what the lawnmower means. Yeah, I won't be able to explain the symbology of the lawnmower. Yeah. This is a recent head that's a large drawing. It's about 3 feet by 5 feet, large drawing, where you can see I'm overlaying. I have a house, a space between houses in the background, and then head in front. So this has actually been worked on a little bit more, and it's changed. The hand that you saw in the studio is not there. Yeah, so it's actually gotten busier and more complex and more overlaid. So yeah. And these are some examples of sculptures that I'm doing that are also busts or heads. So this one's been assembled from some bone parts and some wood. And this one's assembled from just various things. Again, the monk's head, the monk robe below, and this one is called the sound regarder. So in Buddhist teachings, there's this person called Avalokiteshvara, and she or he is the embodiment of compassion, of loving, caring, and the sound regarder hears all the cries of suffering. And if you've ever seen pictures of the Buddha, of a Buddha that has many, many heads, it means they're hearing in all directions, and they're hearing the cries of the world. So I call this the sound regarder because there's telephone poles, you know, that's listening. Yeah. So there's another one that's a head. So these are kind of life-size busts, and they're fun to do as well. They're fun to assemble. basically just use a pin nailer and adhesives. That's it. And there's another one. I call this the impasto monk, because all the paint is, thick paint. Okay, moving right along. Some of the current work that a new series is called Excavations, and this was shown at a museum show in Milwaukee a while back, and there's a few in the gallery as well from that show. These are radical pattern field paintings. So what I'm doing is I'm actually kind of drawing with the paint, and I'm overlaying image after image. So in this one, I started with if you can see a stairwell. You can see a stairwell in the background, and then on top of that, I have all this other information. So there's another one. It's called Earth Mudra. It's excavation, and within that there's many hand gestures. I'm drawing many hand gestures, which are mudras, which are deliberate ways of like conveying information with how you move your hands. So there's one that actually is in the background is the backyard of the house where I grew up, and in the foreground is the drawing in the foreground, which might be a little bit hard to see, is my feet. I'm laying in bed there, and my bookcase and some pictures are in the wall in front of me. Anyway, that's what I was doing with this series, was overlaying. And this one is actually started as a cafe window, and then it's a country road that kind of comes to a T, a Wisconsin country road, and a bunch of other information is overlaid on top. So these are pattern field paintings, and I think the idea that I had with these is, first you read them as a kind of unified texture, and you enjoy them as a unified texture, hopefully. And then being with them for a while, you can kind of get into the notational information, the little, cartoon things, and the little add-ons that I've laid on. So, and there's one as well. That's actually a head, and some people were pulling an older man out of a rubble after his house was bombed in the Middle East, and then other information on top. And here's a drawing of that same series. This is from an Ensor painting, and then there's a boat rack overlaid on top of it, which is right outside my studio in Milwaukee. Oh, sorry. That looks like the same painting. Okay. Here's some more, we're coming to a close here. Here's some more contemporary paintings. And so this is a current painting, and you can see I'm still flooding the field. I really work dense. I have some figuration in there, but basically I'm pushing paint around. Here's a current painting. There's two figures in the sides, and a figure laying down in the foreground, or two figures laying down in the foreground. There are two people in meditation. This is a current painting. I'm sort of at the shore, dumping garbage, dumping my, stuff. And here's a very, very large painting, and this is a dual self-portrait of my studio, And in the studio, overlaid in the studio, I have all these other stuff. I have guests, you could say. I have studio attendants, you know, and they're all attending me in my studio. So, and this is just one example of a large drawing series that I do. So these are simple line drawings. Again, they're heads. They're simple heads, but they're hard to see as heads, but they're all heads. I have a series of maybe 200 of these, so yeah. And here's a current drawing as well. And this is a current painting. Again, the two figures on the sides and a landscape in the middle. So you can see I'm coming back to kind of neo-expressionist roots. I'm getting more expressive with my painting, and that's where I am now. I'm getting more narrative and more expressive with my paint, and losing that kind of the tightness that you saw, that kind of realistic tightness that you saw. This is just an example of the Buddha fields. I still work with watercolors on these little Buddha morphs. And here, this is a part of a scroll of Buddha morphs. And here's a sculpture, a self-portrait of me as a painter, as an artist. And for some reason, it doesn't have a head. And here's another self-portrait. What do you think? Does it look like me? Actually, I am in the background. Do you see me reflected? Yeah, I'm taking a photo with my camera. Yeah. Have a nice day. And we're back to the same painting. So that's it. So thank you for enduring that. Yeah.